We've got breaking news on two fronts concerning Saudi Arabia this hour. First, the Saudi government has announced it has released 3 women jailed for their human rights campaigning. These activists were arrested before the ban on women driving in the kingdom was lifted last June. They're still awaiting a final ruling on their case. 8 other women are also facing charges. Excuse me, some of them told a hearing on Wednesday they had been sexually harassed and flogged by guards while in prison. And then there is the UN investigator calling on Riyadh to publicly open the trial of 11 suspects accused of involvement in the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The special rapporteur on extrajudicial executions, Agnes Callamard, said the closed-door hearings are falling short of international standards. She also called on the kingdom to release the names of the defendants. Let's talk to Sherine Tadros about this, the United Nations representative for Amnesty International, joining us on Skype from New York. Sherine, the types of things which Agnes Callamard is calling for would seem normal and logical. However, that type of pressure on Saudi Arabia, is there any chance of it working?
Well, we've seen the sort of pressure that's been exerted on Saudi Arabia that has led to this one tiny step forward for these 3 women. At least they've been temporarily released. So there is some sort of hope that there is pressure that can be exerted. But this is a whole different thing when we come to talk about Jamal Khashoggi. And this trial has been different from the start because Saudi Arabia is very much trying to paint the Jamal Khashoggi fiasco, really, as an internal affair. This is a trial that they are, that's taking place in Saudi Arabia. They say that they've invited various representatives from France, from the UK, from Russia, from China, from the US to observe this trial, and that they are following international standards. Here's the UN Special Rapporteur coming out with this statement today saying that it is falling below international standards, that this is not an internal affair when you decide that you're going to murder a journalist on foreign territory in a foreign consulate. And so it's a very strong statement by the UN, and let's hope that it doesn't fall on completely deaf ears.
The problem, I guess, though, Sherine, not to be too negative about it, is that the assumption is that it goes all the way up to the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. It's not just dealing with the Saudi judicial system, it's dealing with the royal family right up to the heir apparent. And if there was even a hint of him being involved, or if they were to admit to anything like that, it just wouldn't be allowed, would it?
Well, of course, Saudi Arabia is claiming the exact opposite, though. They're saying that we've identified these 11 people. Of course, we don't know the identity of these people. We don't know what their links are to the government, if any. We don't know anything about it. It's all being done behind closed doors. But Saudi Arabia is saying that we've identified these 11 people, and this is a fair, open trial that we've invited some foreigners to even observe. But if they have nothing to be afraid of, then why not actually open it up? Why not allow for human rights observers, for the UN themselves to come in and observe, for journalists that have asked time and time again to observe the trial? Why don't they let them in as well? So, you can't have it both ways. You can't stand there and say, we are following our judicial process. We have nothing to hide. We've identified these people who are to blame, but then also not allow any sort of transparency. The fact is that when this trial, comes to its end, Saudi Arabia will expect that this whole matter goes to bed because they've, had their trial and they've had their proceedings. But there's no way that the international community will accept this if indeed there has been no transparency in the trial. And that's what we really have to remember here.
Sherine, can I ask you as well, just briefly, about the other story we've got, the 3 Saudi women who have been released from jail, human rights activists. Again, it's only a small step, but I guess it's a step in the right direction.
Exactly. I mean, this is a temporary release, and so we always have to be very careful with this sort of news and not blow it out of proportion. But yes, I think that it does show that some pressure has come to bear. We've seen in the past few months the kind of constant pressure that we've seen, including from the UN themselves and joint statements by various states of the Human Rights Council in Geneva just a few weeks ago, that sent a strong message to Saudi Arabia that we are watching what you do. There's no question that Saudi is under a certain amount of pressure, but it's very important that we keep it up at this point, that we don't allow for this facade, these trials, these small bits and pieces that we get to detract from the bigger question and the bigger issue here, which is about Saudi's very poor human rights record and its continuing crackdown on dissent.
Sherine Tadros from Amnesty International joining us from New York. Thank you so much for that. OK, let us bring in Moen Bishara, our senior